Hi everyone, Ryan Airy here. In case you don't have time to watch all 18 previous films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, here's everything you need to know before seeing Avengers: Infinity War. Thousands of years ago, these ice aliens invaded Norway, but they were stopped by super powerful, handsome aliens from a realm called Asgard. The ancient Norwegians were so grateful that they started to worship the Asgardians. The king of Asgard, Odin, hid a really powerful object, the Space Infinity Stone, on Earth. There's 6 of these stones, and they all have different abilities and are very important, so get used to hearing about them. Later, in 1942, a superpowered Nazi with eczema named the Red Skull finds the stone and uses it to make laser guns. Pew pew! Red Skull leads a group called Hydra, and remember them for later too. Meanwhile, Steve Rogers is a weakling with a heart of gold, but after a few super steroids and a really dangerous tanning bed, he gets superpowers and becomes Captain America. Steve leaves behind a career in show business to fight Nazis with his friends, who include his best friend Bucky, R.I.P. Bucky, Peggy, #Bring Back Agent Carter, and swashbuckling inventor Howard Stark. Howard uses vibranium, the strongest metal on Earth, to make Steve a bulletproof frisbee. Cap fights the Red Skull, who makes the classic Nazi mistake of staring too long at a celestial object, and then Steve saves the world by crashing an airplane. R.I.P. Steve. Peggy and Howard go on to found a spy organization called the Strategic Homeland Intervention and Logistics Division, or SHIELD for short. Fast forward about 70 years, and Howard Stark's kid Tony is a fun-loving who got Scrooge McDuck rich by making weapons for the military. But one of his own missiles puts shrapnel in his heart and he's kidnapped by terrorists. He escapes by making himself a super suit powered by a small reactor in his chest that also keeps him alive. Then he has
what alcoholics refer to as a moment of clarity.
Builds a new suit to fight evil and calls himself Iron Man. He fights some bad guys, including his evil business partner who was behind everything all along.
What?
And along the way, he falls in love with his assistant Pepper Potts and meets Phil Coulson, a SHIELD agent, and Nick Fury, leader of SHIELD. A few months later, Tony's being poisoned by the arc reactor that powers the Iron Man suit and keeps him alive, but otherwise things are going pretty well. Until Mickey Rourke, an evil genius who hates Tony because dad stuff, teams up with Stark business rival Justin Hammer to make their own Iron Man suits. Tony gets shit-faced in an awesome birthday party and fights his best friend, Colonel James Rhodes. Rhodes says,
"Screw you guys, I'm going home,"
and snatches a suit for the military. Scarlett Johansson plays Pepper's assistant, but it turns out that she's actually a SHIELD agent called the Black Widow, which you would only know if you had seen a trailer, a poster, or any other bit of marketing for Iron Man 2. With a little help from a video of his dead dad, Tony invents a new element that saves his life. He and Rhodes defeat the bad guys by crossing the streams, and Nick Fury is dealing with problems happening off in other movies.
I have bigger problems than you in the Southwest region.
You guys remember Odin, right? Well, now he's got 2 sons. Thor, captain of the varsity Space Vikings and kind of a douche, and Loki, a know-it-all wise-ass who Odin found on a rock. Odin wants Thor to become king so he can finally retire, but frost giants invade and spoil his coronation. Bro is crazy pissed and he takes his space bros to kill some frost giants, but that's an act of war, bro, so Odin takes away his powers and sends him to New Mexico. Thor meets a group of scientists who include Natalie Portman, and the two of them smile at each other a lot.
Show me that smile again.
Back in Asgard, Loki finds out he's actually a frost giant and yells at Odin till he falls asleep.
Aww.
Loki becomes king, and Thor's bros figure out that Loki was actually behind everything all along.
What?
Back on Earth, Thor sacrifices his life to a killer robot and his powers return. He stops Loki from committing genocide, and his brother falls into an abyss. Elsewhere, the military is attacking a giant green Jack Nicholson monster called the Hulk. The monster is actually Bruce Banner, a scientist who can't let himself get angry or have sex, or else he'll turn into a slightly smaller version of Brock Lesnar. Bruce is in love with Liv Tyler, but her dad, Thunderbolt Ross, remember him for later, hates Banner, because Liv Tyler's fathers always hate her boyfriends. Ross gives another soldier big green superpowers, but that guy's an even bigger dick than the Hulk, so they throw down on 125th Street and wreck Harlem, which no one in the show Luke Cage ever mentions. Banner goes into hiding, and now maybe he can control the Hulk? Sometimes, it just depends what the screenplay needs from him. And after this, he has a completely new face. Oh, and S.H.I.E.L.D. finds Captain America's frozen body, and it turns out he's still alive and has a bad case of the all my friends are dead.
I slept too long!
Loki returns to Earth with a mind control scepter and uses it to brainwash a S.H.I.E.L.D. archer named Hawkeye. Together, they steal the Space Stone. Nick Fury recruits Iron Man, Banner, and Captain America to find the stone. Thor shows up, they capture Loki, and, like his father before him, he stands behind glass and says creepy things to a female protagonist. The heroes argue, they're attacked, Loki kills Coulson and sets his master plan into action. The Space Stone opens a portal and aliens pour through. The heroes defeat them, call themselves the Avengers, then briefly go away to star in their own films. Meanwhile, in space, it turns out Loki was actually working for this guy, Thanos, and that Thanos was behind everything all along.
What?
Thanos really wants all the Infinity Stones, and he uses his 2 adopted assassin daughters, Gamora and Nebula, to help find them. The sisters hate him and each other. There's 2 planets that are just wrapping up a 1,000-year war, the Kree Empire and Xandar. A Kree radical named Ronan the Accuser hates Xandar and wants Thanos to destroy the planet. Thanos is like, cool, but first you gotta get me this orb. But a guy from Earth named Peter Quill snags the orb before Ronan's goons. Peter's into rock and roll, and he was raised by a space pirate named Yondu. Gamora fights Peter for the orb, but then they both go to jail with bounty hunters named Rocket, a talking raccoon, and Groot, a talking tree.
I'm Groot.
In jail, they join Drax, who hates Ronan for killing his family, and they all escape to sell the orb to the Collector, otherwise known as the Space Hoarder. Space Hoarder says that the orb actually contains the Power Infinity Stone, explodes, and through a series of mishaps, Ronan ends up with the stone. Then this unlikely band of misfits teams up to stop Ronan from destroying Xandar. Groot dies, but is reborn as Baby Groot, and the Xandarian police lock up the Power Stone in their space safe, where I'm sure no one will ever find it. A few months later, and the Guardians meet Peter's long-lost dad, Ego, the living planet. The Guardians make friends with an alien named Mantis, who helps Ego sleep and hides his rampant child murdering. Rocket and Groot are captured by mutinous space pirates, then they help Yondu take control of his ship, in a scene that becomes a lot darker when you change out the music. Nebula tracks down Gamora, they fight for a while, and afterwards they kinda like each other.
I just wanted a sister!
It turns out that Ego is a prick of a deadbeat dad who killed Peter's mom, wants to conquer the universe, and breaks his kids' toys when they don't want to help him end existence. Everyone unites to fight the giant planet, Yondu dies, and celebrity guest stars show up for the funeral. Nebula leaves to go kill Thanos, and Groot becomes a teenager. Elsewhere in space, Loki is in Asgardian jail, and Thor is finishing up a war by killing the strongest soldier on the battlefield, in a scene that's a direct ripoff from the movie Troy. And also the Bible. Jane slips through a dimensional portal and gets possessed by another Infinity Stone, this one's called the Ether, which controls reality. The Dark Elves, these ancient enemies of Asgard, want the Ether so they can throw it into a space eclipse and end the universe. Thor takes Jane to meet some space doctors on Asgard when the Dark Elves invade, kill Thor's mom, and then Thor breaks Loki out of jail and they take Jane to a deserted planet to destroy the Ether. But instead, the Dark Elves steal it, Loki dies, and Thor and Jane walk through a convenient plot hole back to Earth. There, they team up with their science friends to drop a ship on the Ninth Doctor, and everyone is saved. Thor turns down the throne of Asgard so he can make out with his girlfriend, the Asgardians give the Space Hoarder the Ether, and it turns out that Loki is alive and pretending to be his dad. It's a good thing his mom's dead, right? Meanwhile, back on Earth, Captain America is working for S.H.I.E.L.D. alongside Black Widow, and things seem to be going fine until Nick Fury is fake assassinated by a covert operative called the Winter Soldier. Meanwhile, Robert Redford, head of the World Security Council, wants Captain America arrested. So Cap and Black Widow go on the run and make friends with Sam Wilson, an Air Force vet who uses robot wings to fly. They find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infiltrated by Hydra, and they're going to blow the hell out of the world with flying aircraft carriers. Then it turns out that Robert Redford was actually behind everything all along.
What?
Not only that, but Cap's best friend Bucky is alive and was brainwashed to become the Winter Soldier. In the end, Cap brings down S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury fakes his own death, and Bucky goes on the run. Out on the West Coast, Tony has PTSD from nearly dying in outer space. He spends all his time in his basement building new suits until a terrorist named the Mandarin blows up his house. Then Tony goes to Tennessee to charge up his suit and reluctantly mentor the kid from Jurassic World. After some sleuthing, he finds out that the Mandarin is actually an actor and that Guy Pearce has been behind everything all along.
What?
Tony, Rhodey, and Pepper beat up Guy Pearce, save the president, and Tony quits being Iron Man, bringing his story to a satisfying conclusion. Nah, I'm just kidding. He's back for the next Avengers movie when the team is taking down a Hydra base and recapturing Loki's scepter. Hydra used the scepter to give superpowers to Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. Their powers are:
he's fast and she's weird.
Tony uses the scepter to give life to a murderous artificial intelligence called Ultron. Ultron recruits the Maximoffs, Wanda gives the Avengers freaky visions, and Iron Man stops a Hulk rampage with super special armor. Then everybody has a sleepover at Hawkeye's house while Thor takes some space peyote and has a vision in a cave. Ultron breaks open Loki's staff to reveal the Mind Stone, another one of the Infinity Stones. He uses the stone, some vibranium, and artificial tissue to create a new body for himself, which the Avengers steal.
I stole a baby!
Wanda and Pietro learn the evil robot is actually an evil robot, and they join the good guys. The Avengers bring the body to life, and now it's called the Vision, and they all team up to stop Ultron's evil army from destroying the world. Pietro dies, Hawkeye, Tony, and Thor leave the team, and Hulk goes into space, and oh yeah, he and Black Widow are kind of a thing now. But he leaves, so it doesn't matter. So now there's a new team of Avengers, with Vision, War Machine, Wanda, and the Falcon all joining up. But not soon after this, Falcon gets in a fight with a new superhero named Ant-Man, whose superpower is to shrink down and talk to ants. His real name is Scott Lang. He's an ex-con computer hacker who just wants money to pay his child support.
I just want my kids back.
His shrinking suit was invented by a scientist named Hank Pym, who used to work at S.H.I.E.L.D. with Howard Stark and Peggy Carter. And he hires Scott to break into his old company and steal a new shrinking suit that the bad guy, this guy, just created to sell to Hydra. Along with Hank's daughter Hope and a few colorful ex-cons, they plan a suit heist. But the robbery is a bust, and Scott ends up defeating the bad guy by shrinking so small he enters the quantum realm, where the laws of time and space do not matter. Meanwhile, Thunderbolt Ross wants to register all superheroes so they work for the government. Tony feels guilty about creating a murder bot, and so he signs on, but Steve refuses and the issue splits the Avengers. The UN is bombed, killing the King of Wakanda, which is the world's only source of vibranium. The news reports that Bucky did the bombing, so the new King of Wakanda, T'Challa, puts on a cat costume and goes after him. That's because T'Challa is also the superpowered guardian of Wakanda, the Black Panther. But it turns out that a guy named Zemo framed Bucky, and he's been behind everything all along.
What?
Cap recruits a team to go after Zemo, and Tony recruits a team to go after Cap. This team includes a teenager from Queens with spider powers who's named
Spider-Man.
They have a big smashy fight where Rhodey is paralyzed. Then Cap and Bucky get away while Natasha switches sides to help them escape. Half the heroes go to underwater jail while Tony flies to Siberia to help Cap and Bucky stop Zemo. It turns out all Zemo really wanted was to break up the Avengers by showing Iron Man a video of Bucky killing his parents. That's a pretty plastic move.
If someone says something bad about you, you'd want me to tell you, right?
So everyone fights, the Avengers break up, Steve breaks his friends out of jail, and Bucky, like Dave Chappelle, goes to Africa to clear his head. Now he's no longer brainwashed, and the Wakandans call him the White Wolf, which is the nickname that this guy gave himself. Wakanda, by the way, is a hidden kingdom filled with super science. They use vibranium to do whatever the plot needs them to do, like make weapons, bullet trains, or heal people. Shuri, the princess of Wakanda, is smarter than Tony Stark and can invent pretty much anything that the screenplay needs. T'Challa becomes king of Wakanda and everything is fine until his pissed off American cousin Killmonger shows up, kicks his ass, and takes the throne. Killmonger wants to go to war with the rest of the world, but T'Challa shows up to reclaim his kingdom. There's a brief Wakandan civil war, which T'Challa wins with the help of Shuri, his badass bodyguards, the Dora Milaje, a spy named Nakia, a tribe that worships white gorillas, and Bilbo. In the end, T'Challa decides to open Wakanda up to the world and share their technology. Tony, meanwhile, is trying to groom young Peter Parker, who's actually Spider-Man, to join the Avengers. He gives him a suit that monitors his daily superhero routine. Peter's not very good at being a superhero, and he flat out sucks at keeping his secret identity.
That's you. You're the Spider-Man.
He and his friend Ned are tracking down a flying guy called the Vulture, who's stealing tech that's left over from the alien invasion in the Avengers. Peter destroys one of the Staten Island ferries and Tony takes the suit back, but the timing sucks because it turns out that the father of his homecoming date is the Vulture, and that he's been behind everything all along.
What?
Peter leaves the dance early to stop Vulture from robbing Stark Tower. Afterwards, he decides not to rush being a superhero, and he turns down a chance to join the Avengers. Elsewhere in New York, there's a really famous surgeon named Dr. Strange. That's his real name. Like proto-Tony Stark, he's good at his job, but kind of a dick. After a horribly detailed car accident, his hands are destroyed and his career is ruined. He travels to Nepal for a little Eastern healing, and instead meets a powder lookalike named the Ancient One who does magic. She teaches him to summon energy from other dimensions and perform magic tricks.
Illusion, Michael.
He learns how to teleport, make energy weapons, and turn into a Force ghost. He also gets a cape that helps him fly. The bad guy, Mads Mikkelsen, wants to let an evil monster named Dormammu destroy the Earth. Strange, his buddy Baron Mordo, and a librarian named Wong stop Mads Mikkelsen with the Eye of Agamotto, which contains the Time Infinity Stone. Strange uses the stone to Groundhog Day himself until Dormammu gets so bored that he gives up, which is a pretty lame way for a villain to go out. At the end, Strange is protecting Earth from extra-dimensional threats by living rent-free in a huge house in Greenwich Village. Soon, he helps Thor and Loki find their dad in Norway. They recover Odin just in time to watch him Luke Skywalker himself into the Force. Then their long-lost sister Hela shows up, breaks Thor's hammer, and quickly conquers Asgard and kills a few supporting characters. Thor and Loki end up on a junk planet where Jeff Goldblum makes gladiators fight. The Hulk is on the planet, and he's actually a gladiator now. A shocking surprise, which you would only know if you saw the trailer.